When you read the interview that Zogu granted Ejindu, Dennis Ejindu, and you find this in this book by J. Ishawa Eligo. The book is called Go On, the biography of a soldier statesman. But I think I even find it online. You should be able to find it online, but it's in that book by J. Eligo. He mentioned that there was no tribal consideration in the north, but in the south there was tribal consideration. And when he said in the south, you know exactly what I was talking about, because what was supposed to happen in Ibadan happened. They even did more than they were supposed to do. But in the east, nothing happened. Only for us to read the special branch report of 1966 and discover that there was not supposed to be anything happening in the east. They even said nothing was supposed to happen in the east. Where do I get this thing I'm saying? It's from a document called the Special Branch Report. If you belong to our Telegram channel, Radio Me Global, you will find that document there. You read the Special Branch Report, they had no plans for the east, which means that they just lied to everybody. That's number one. Number two, you read Bengbule's book, Nigeria's Five Majors, and then you discover what he said about what Okafor and OG did. He said what they did was an act of treachery that nobody envisaged. And what he was talking about was the fact that they shielded Ironsi. And then you read the book by Hilary Njoku. The book is called A Tragedy Without Heroes. And then you see what Ironsi said in the room when he said, but they said they were not going to kill anybody. But they said nobody would die. While he was saying that, he was asking for people that they should bring to him. Two of the people he said they should bring to him, two of them were the original coup planners, Ifajuna and Oji. So, like, you begin to say, okay, what's happening here? You read Gowon's book, for the book about Gowon's biography. He mentioned how what Ironsi told him the day before, which made him know that Ironsi knew about it. Then you move away from all of that and you read the book by Shehu Shagari. The book is called Beckon to Serve. And then you see what happened when they couldn't find a prime minister. They said they wanted Tip Charima to become the prime minister. They went to, and this is not just about Ironsi, by the way. You know why? If you read the branch report, they mentioned that they did this thing with the collaboration of civilians. There were civilians involved, and I can assure you those civilians were in NCNC. How do I know? Because of what happened. I'm not going to go back and read everything, but let me just remind you, if you were here last week, talk about what happened in the book Beckon to Serve by Shehu Shagari, where he mentioned that when they couldn't find the prime minister and they needed to meet, and by the way, he was corroborated by another person at a different occasion in year 2000. The man is called Chief Sir Richard Akinjide, who mentioned something similar, that they went to Orizu's house. Orizu was the Senate president. It was also the acting president in the absence of the president, who was conveniently away from Nigeria. Tell me about somebody who knew what was going to happen before he ran away. Baba Japa, to the point that even his own doctor left him where he went. Even his people, his aide-de-camp, his PA left him and traveled to Nigeria, but Baba just stayed abroad because he knew what was happening. And I knew Azikiwe was in on it. Not that he knew about it, he was in on it. And I say that based on the facts available. I'm just going to share some of it before we go to the topic. So Azikiwe was away. Orizu was the Senate president and the acting president. They brought the Charima team and said, listen, this man should be the acting prime minister. Why? Because it's the most senior minister or person in public office, really, from the north. And the north, of course, had the majority seats in parliament. So, but they needed the Senate president, or sorry, the acting president, to appoint him as a substantive prime minister, or even just acting prime minister. While they were doing that, the NCNC said, guys, we also have who want to make our own prime minister, which makes no sense. Why doesn't it make any sense? Because the president was Igbo. The Senate president was Igbo. The GOC was Igbo. Why would the prime minister be Igbo? Especially when the party of the supposed prime minister is not even the majority party in the parliament. So NCNC had a plan all along, and then they wanted to have Mbadiwe to become prime minister. And of course, NPC people said no because they were the majority guys. Then Orizu said, you guys just go, we'll talk about it later. No, before he even said they should go, they will talk about it later. While they were having that conversation, Ironsi comes into the house, has soldiers staying in the living room with these politicians, and according to Shehu Shagari, they were armed. And while they were there, Orizu was in the room with Ironsi for 40 minutes. I can assure you they were not discussing, Roman Empire history. They were talking about whatever they were talking about because of what happened afterwards. What happened afterwards was that when they came out, Ironsi had a tete-a-tete with Deep Charima, and then he left. Orizu told them that we're not going to make Deep Charima the prime minister or acting prime minister. I'm going to talk to the president who is away. He didn't have to talk to the president, but he said he was going to talk to the president. This. Just go. We'll talk about it later. The next day, on the 16th of January, the day after the coup. By the way, this is on the day of the coup. The day after the coup, on the 16th of January, Ironsi calls everybody at 6:30 p.m. They meet, to have conversation about, the cabinet. The cabinet actually, they met, and he told them exactly what he wanted to do. He was going to take over power. And when he was reminded that the British could offer help, because they've already contacted the British, they were willing to help Nigeria. Let's work with them. Ironsi said, "Oh, it's too late. My boys are already asking me to become head of state in one day." And that's why I said, when you look at the coup, it was a 2FA thing. It was a two-factor authentication process. If the civilian did not work, the military would work. And so, since the people did not agree to have Mbadiwe as the prime minister, of course, it made sense that Ironsi would become the prime minister. That's how I begin to see that, okay, oh boy. Apart from the fact that all the people that were unalived, no major person from the east was unalive. Nothing happened to anybody. And by the way, every single person in the east that was supposed to be killed had an excuse. I don't know how they did it, but everybody had to. Even Ironsi, in the book by Bengbule, he mentioned that it was too much of a coincidence. These were his words. It was too much of a coincidence that while Oji and Okafor were driving to Ironsi's house, Ironsi was driving out of that house, like Oga Hafa. And we know that yesterday you said that nobody must touch him. So I already know that Abba. Anyway, the planners were mostly Igbos. Well, that's not what makes it an Igbo coup. But the victims were all but Igbo people. The beneficiaries were mostly Igbo. And the way it worked, the way they structured it, to not make matters worse. This is the nail that I think saved the coffin. 11:50 p.m. on January 16, Orizu decided to give a speech, a broadcast about how they were going to hand over power. I think I read that speech last week. Immediately after him, Ironsi, accepted power. Like they just lied to themselves, say it was voluntary transfer of power. Akejide said it was not voluntary because he told them we could hand over as gentlemen or we can do it the hard way. Shehu Shagari said the place was surrounded by soldiers and they were armed. What else do you expect them to do? He also said that Ironsi and this guy, by the way, were crying. Sorry, Ironsi was crying like, I don't know about politics. I don't really have an idea. And just like Mbadi would say, where's the prime minister? You want to be prime minister on 15 January, you're now crying on 16 January that where is the prime minister? It's just all planned work. To not make matters worse, this is the craziest part. All of this happened in the evening at around 6:30 p.m. up until past 9. The speech was given at 11:30 p.m. Sorry, 11:50 p.m. 10 minutes to 12 midnight. But earlier in the day, the president of Nigeria, Azikiwe, who was in Surrey in England, made a speech acknowledging that Ironsi was the general officer commanding of the Nigerian Armed Forces, essentially acknowledging him as the head of state long before they made that declaration in Nigeria. You don't think this is not about he knew about it. This was about he was part of the plan. He was in on it. And yes, that's how Ironsi became head of state. But was that the reason for the war? No. After that happened, people were happy. They heaved the sigh of relief that maybe something good is going to happen. And like I said earlier, a lot of people do this thing with, we just want military, we want to have Traore. Listen, I've seen Buhari as head of state, IBB as head of state, Abacha as head of state, Abdulsalam Abubakar as head of state. Those four, at least I saw those last four. Listen, in case they've told you that was the best time, it's a lie. There's nothing really cool about it. We saw something, it's called far. You know what they call seeing far? You saw far. We suffered. Things were tough. what you think will happen because of military may not happen. You may just discover that the military is actually worse than the people you are trying to remove. So what did they say? If, for instance, you read the speech by Nzogu, which I'm not going to read, one of the things he said, Gaddafi Nko, what are your chances? What's the probability you're going to get Gaddafi? That's the issue. What's the probability you're going to get a Gaddafi? And how many times have you tried it? And how many times have you gotten anything close to Gaddafi? Nigerians have to disabuse their minds from looking for messiahs. You don't need messiahs, you need systems. You don't need a benevolent dictator, you need systems that work. You need structure. You create structure that works, not to be looking for a messiah. All this messiah is another savior. Nah, lie. But they will soon disappoint you. It's just the way of man. So please, all this military thing, what you do as a people is, when we talk about, we're going back to the book very soon. When we talk about Sena climbs, what makes them better than us is that they have better systems. They have better systems. Their systems work. And the systems we are enjoying, if you live in Europe or you live in the UK or you live in the US, that system took decades, centuries to build. What we are running away from as Nigerians is system building. We want ready-made. We just want one person just come and just cut everything, just turn it around, and you're like, it's a miracle. Not be like that. It's not like that. People build systems. We enjoy the system, but we have to learn how to build it. All right, back to this now. So while everybody's explaining, we don't like what's happening. For instance, I was saying earlier, if you read the speech by Nzogu, he said they're having this in order to remove nepotism and corruption, and those who collect 10% and those who make the nation big for nothing. These were his words from his speech. For somebody who wants to remove nepotism, by the way, I always say this, that I like to make that point. Nzogu was a revolutionary. Adewale Ademega was a revolutionary. They just wanted to change Nigeria, but they're very naive. Because while they were doing all those things, fighting to change Nigeria and remove nepotism, guess what the guy was doing? Let me read to you. I read it earlier. I'm going to read it one more time. If the truth must be spoken, this is Adewale Ademega talking about Ironsi. If the truth must be spoken, Ironsi had implicit faith in his own type of Nigerians, who, the non-revolutionary and the reactionary type of Easterners and Midwest Igbos. Therefore, as soon as he had taken over the reins of power, he promoted more than 12 of them from major to lieutenant colonel. 18 people at a go. 5 Yoruba guys, they were bypassed. But it's not new. This was in 66. It already happened in 64 in the civil service. But that's talk for another day. Let's stick to the topic. So, people were looking at him like, I say this guy is not taking advantage of this thing. He's not really changing anything. What he's doing really is to just install his own people. And it's something I learned interestingly from my brother. Years ago, he had studied international relations. So he came on one of those days and he said to me, he was talking about the concept of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And I think it's one of the most brilliant conversations we've ever had. This was years ago. You see, this is what usually happens. There's a synthesis. There's a thesis. There's an idea. This is the idea. The thesis. You create an antithesis. You speak against the idea. Oh, they are bad people. All these politicians. No, nepotism. Oh, corruption. Terrible human beings. Just insult everybody. That's your antithesis. Like, this is not how it should be. We have a better way of making things work. This is not good. Then when they get into power, there's synthesis. Synthesis basically is that you now bring everything back to the same point where you become what you've been criticizing. Essentially, what you see with Ironsi is that what they were speaking against was what they became. I don't even think that's what they became. I think that's what they were all along. And people were watching. Now let's go back to the speech by Enahoro.